A Song Beneath the Stars. Chapter 1, A Chance Encounter. The town of Saranvale was known for its quiet charm, a place where the days moved slowly and the nights were filled with the soft chirping of crickets beneath the moonlight. It was in this town that Emma Hayes found refuge after a difficult breakup and the recent passing of her father. She was a music teacher at the local school, quiet and thoughtful, often lost in melodies that only she could hear. One evening, while playing the piano at the old community hall, she met Liam Carter, a traveler and writer, who had arrived in town searching for inspiration. Drawn by the sound of her music, he stood by the door, captivated by the emotion in her notes. "You play like your heart is breaking," he said softly when she finished. Emma looked up, surprised by the stranger's presence but intrigued by his words. "Maybe that's the only way I know how to play." And just like that, something stirred. Quietly, like a forgotten chord remembered in silence. Chapter 2, Slow Bloom. Liam stayed in Saranvale longer than planned. He would join Emma at the community hall in the evenings, sometimes with a notebook, other times with coffee. Their conversations unfolded gently, like pages of a novel, filled with laughter, shared stories, and the quiet acknowledgement of old wounds. They learned each other's pasts, Emma's heartbreak and grief, Liam's restless spirit and the guilt of walking away from love too easily. But neither tried to fix the other. They simply sat with each other's truths, offering nothing but presence and patience. By the time spring arrived, they found themselves dancing under the stars one night after a school concert, no music playing but their hearts in perfect rhythm. Chapter 3, The Distance Between. But love, no matter how magical, is never without its trials. Liam was offered a publishing deal in New York, a lifelong dream. When he told Emma, her smile trembled. "You should go," she whispered, though her heart ached. "And leave this?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. Emma touched his chest gently. "You'll never leave." "Not really." They promised letters, visits, calls, but even the best intentions struggle against time and distance. The days turned to months. The calls became shorter. The silence grew longer. One night, Emma sat alone by the piano, tears falling onto the keys. She realized that she had loved him with her whole being, but maybe love wasn't always enough to keep someone near. Chapter 4, Return. Nearly a year passed. Emma continued teaching, playing, living. Her heart had healed, but it held a space only Liam had ever filled. Then, on the anniversary of their first meeting, he returned. No calls. No warnings. He walked into the community hall just as she was playing the same melody from their first night. "I couldn't write a single word that mattered without you," he said, voice shaking. Emma stood slowly. "I thought you forgot me. I remembered you in every sunset, every song, every word I didn't write." And this time, when they kissed, there was no promise of leaving again. Chapter 5, A New Chapter. Liam chose to stay. Not because he gave up on his dreams, but because he finally understood, real inspiration wasn't found in cities or stories. It was in the quiet strength of someone who knew him completely, and still waited. Together, they composed music and memories, opened a small art and music school for the children of Saranvale, and every evening, they sat beneath the stars, sometimes in silence, sometimes singing together, always holding each other like a favorite melody. Love had found its place, in notes, in words, in the simple act of staying. When the autumn leaves fall. In the quiet town of Havenbrook, where the maple trees painted the streets golden every autumn, lived a girl named Alara. She was a school librarian, quiet, warm-hearted, and often lost in the pages of old love poems. Every morning, she would walk past the same bakery, always stopping for a cup of chamomile tea and a shy smile from the baker, Adrian. Adrian was known for two things, his irresistible cinnamon rolls and the sadness behind his eyes. He was once a traveling chef, full of fire and dreams, but after losing his younger sister in a car accident 3 years ago, he returned to Havenbrook, retreating into the rhythm of baking and silence. Alara and Adrian exchanged pleasantries for months, both too shy, too cautious, too familiar with the ache of loss to reach further. But one rainy October morning changed everything. That day, the storm was heavy. Alara entered the bakery soaked, her umbrella broken by the wind. Adrian, noticing her shivering, led her to a stool behind the counter, wrapped a towel around her shoulders, and placed a cup of hot cocoa in her hands. "You look like a ghost," he teased gently. She laughed, the sound surprising both of them. "And you look like you haven't smiled in months." He blinked. "Maybe because no one's made me laugh in months." That moment sparked something fragile but real. Over the following weeks, their conversations grew longer. She told him about her dreams of writing a children's book. He spoke of his travels in Italy, and the tiny seaside kitchen where he first fell in love with food. They shared secrets, regrets, and quiet dreams they never told anyone else. One night, under a sky full of stars and falling leaves, Alara stood outside the bakery waiting for Adrian. He appeared with a small cake in his hands. On it, in delicate icing, were the words, "To new chapters." "I don't know what this is, or where it's going," he said, voice trembling slightly, "but I want to try." Tears welled in her eyes. "Me too." From that night on, they were inseparable. They spent weekends hiking through forests, testing cake recipes, writing stories together in the library after hours. Adrian taught her how to knead dough, she taught him how to dream again. But love, like the seasons, has its storms. That winter, Alara was offered a scholarship to a writing program in Paris. It was her dream, but it meant leaving Havenbrook and Adrian. "I don't want you to stay just for me," he said, trying to sound brave. "But I'm scared that if you leave, you'll forget this, us." She reached for his hand. "How could I forget the one who brought me back to life?" They promised to write letters, real ones, no emails, no texts. Adrian would send her one every Sunday, and she'd reply every Thursday. And they did. Every week, she would walk to a little cafe on Rue de Martyrs and read his words, about the snow in Havenbrook, about a new recipe, about how much he missed her smile. And every reply she sent told him about Parisian bookstores, cobbled streets, and how his letters kept her warm. A year passed. The program ended. She stood at Charles de Gaulle Airport, a letter in her hand. In it, Adrian had written, "If you still want to write our story, come home. I've saved a place beside me, always." She returned to Havenbrook in spring. Adrian was waiting outside the bakery, holding a small notebook. On the cover, embossed in gold, were the words, "When the autumn leaves fall," the children's book they had written together. He smiled. "Let's start chapter 1. And so they did, under a sky no longer cloudy with sorrow, but bursting with hope, love, and all the seasons they would share together.